Tonight, if you go outside in a city, you will see almost nothing in the sky, a handful of faint stars washed out by streetlights and glowing screens. We have, in a very real sense, lost the night sky. But now imagine the world of our ancient ancestors. No electric lights anywhere on Earth, no glow on the horizon, just the deep, total darkness of the night, and above it the most spectacular sight in all nature, a sky absolutely blazing with stars, thousands upon thousands of them, the glowing river of the Milky Way stretching from horizon to horizon, so bright it cast shadows. This was the ceiling of the ancient world, seen every single clear night by every human who ever lived for hundreds of thousands of years. And here is the remarkable thing. Our ancestors did not just glance at this sky. They studied it. They knew it intimately. They named its patterns, tracked its movements, told stories about it, and used it to navigate, to keep time, and to make sense of their place in the cosmos. Today, we are going to look up, as they did, and explore the deep and beautiful relationship between ancient humans and the stars, the star maps they carried in their heads. To understand why the stars mattered so much, you have to truly grasp what the night sky was to ancient people. For us, it is a faint, distant, and largely ignored backdrop. For them, it was a vivid, dominant, ever-present feature of life, as familiar as the landscape around them. Every clear night, the heavens put on an overwhelming display, and our ancestors watched it with an attention we can barely imagine. And crucially, they would have noticed that the sky was not random or chaotic. It was deeply ordered and predictable. The same patterns of stars appeared in the same places. The sky wheeled overhead in a regular, repeating motion through the night. Particular stars and groupings rose and set at particular times and shifted in a reliable way through the seasons. The sky was a vast, glittering clock and calendar, perfectly regular, available to anyone who learned to read it, and our ancestors, brilliant observers of their world, learned to read it superbly. One of the first things they did was to find patterns, to connect the dots of the stars into recognizable shapes, what we call constellations. This is a deeply human thing to do. Our minds are pattern-seeking machines, and faced with a sky full of scattered points of light, people everywhere have instinctively grouped them into figures, animals, people, objects, and woven stories around them. And here is something genuinely astonishing. Certain star groupings seem to have captured human attention across vastly different cultures and times all over the world. The most striking example is a small, tight, beautiful little cluster of stars that many cultures call the Seven Sisters, known to astronomers as the Pleiades. This distinctive little knot of stars stands out vividly in a dark sky, and remarkably, cultures separated by entire oceans and tens of thousands of years independently noticed it, named it, and told stories about it, often intriguingly describing it as a group of sisters or young women. The fact that the same cluster drew human attention again and again across the whole globe hints at just how universally and deeply our ancestors engaged with the night sky. And there is tantalizing evidence that this stargazing reaches very deep into the past. In the famous painted caves of Ice Age Europe, alongside the magnificent animals, some researchers have noticed clusters of dots that may not be random decoration. In one celebrated cave, above the painting of a great bull, there is a cluster of dots that some scholars interpret as a representation of the Pleiades, that same Seven Sisters cluster, painted perhaps 17,000 years ago.
Other marks in the same caves have been suggested to represent other stars and patterns. Now, it is very important to be honest here, because this is a genuinely debated and controversial area of research. Not all scientists agree that these dots are star maps. Some argue they could be decoration, symbols, or something else entirely, and they rightly caution against reading our own modern constellations into ancient art. The truth is uncertain, but the very possibility is thrilling. If even some of these interpretations are correct, it would mean that our ancestors were not only painting the animals of their world, but also the stars of their sky, recording the heavens on the walls of their caves tens of thousands of years ago. What we can say with much more confidence is that ancient people used the stars for intensely practical purposes, and the first of these was navigation, finding their way across the world.
The stars are a magnificent natural compass. Because they move in such regular and predictable ways, and because certain stars mark certain directions, anyone who learns the sky can use it to find their way, even across featureless terrain or open ocean, even in the dark. This knowledge would have been vital to our ancestors as they spread across the entire planet. And the most spectacular proof of ancient star navigation comes from the peoples who settled the remote islands of the Pacific Ocean. These master navigators sailed thousands of kilometers across open, empty sea with no land in sight for weeks and found tiny, distant islands with extraordinary precision. How? In large part by reading the stars, using an intricate knowledge of which stars rose and set over which islands, memorizing the sky as a map, and steering by the heavens night after night. This was one of the greatest navigational achievements in human history, accomplished without any instruments at all, using nothing but the star maps held in the navigators' minds. The second great practical use of the stars was keeping time, tracking the seasons and the passage of the year. For people whose survival depended on knowing when the seasons would change, when animals would migrate, when plants would fruit, when the rains would come, the stars were an invaluable calendar. Because particular stars and constellations appear and disappear from the night sky at particular times of year in a reliable cycle, ancient people could read the season directly from the sky. The first appearance of a certain star on the horizon before dawn, or the position of a familiar constellation, could signal that it was time to move, to plant, to harvest, or to prepare for cold. Cultures all over the world used exactly this method, and that same bright cluster, the Pleiades, was used by many different peoples as a seasonal marker, its appearance or disappearance signaling when to begin important activities like planting crops. The sky told our ancestors not just where they were, but when they were, anchoring them in the great turning cycle of the year. We even have hints that ancient people may have been recording their astronomical knowledge in physical form. On various bones and stones from deep prehistory, archaeologists have found sequences of marks and notches that some researchers believe may represent the early lunar calendars carved by hand. As with the cave paintings, these interpretations are debated and not certain, but they point to the same conclusion. Our ancestors were paying close, systematic attention to the rhythms of the heavens, and perhaps trying to record and keep track of them tens of thousands of years ago. There was also a deeper dimension to all of this, beyond the practical. The night sky was almost certainly woven into the spiritual and storytelling life of ancient people. The stars were not just tools for navigation and timekeeping. They were the setting for myths, the home of ancestors and spirits, the canvas onto which people projected their deepest stories about the world, about creation, about life and death, about the great questions of existence.
The patterns in the sky became characters in tales told around the fire, knowledge and meaning passed down across the generations through the constellations. Indigenous cultures around the world, including the Aboriginal peoples of Australia, who hold some of the oldest continuous cultural traditions on Earth, have rich and sophisticated astronomical traditions in which the stars are bound up with stories, law, seasonal knowledge, and the sacred. These living traditions give us a precious window into just how deep, complex, and meaningful the human relationship with the sky has always been. When you put it all together, a profound picture emerges of our ancestors and the stars. These were not simple people gazing blankly at the heavens. They were sophisticated sky watchers who knew the night sky with an intimacy almost none of us possess today. They found patterns in the stars and told stories about them. They used the sky to navigate across deserts and oceans, to find their way to the most remote corners of the earth. They read the seasons in the rising and setting of the constellations, timing their lives to the great rhythms of the cosmos. And they looked up at that blazing river of stars and found in it meaning, beauty, and a sense of their place in something vast and eternal. The star maps were not on paper. They were in their heads and in their stories, passed from parent to child across countless generations. And here is perhaps the most moving thought of all. The very same stars that our ancient ancestors gazed upon, named, navigated by, and wove into their stories are still up there tonight, almost completely unchanged. The seven sisters still cluster together. The same constellations still wheel overhead. When you find a truly dark place, away from the lights, and look up at the brilliant sky, you are seeing very nearly the exact same sight that moved and guided human beings tens of thousands of years ago. The sky is the one part of the ancient world that has barely changed, a direct, living connection to the people of the deep past. They looked up and saw what you can still see. So the next time you get the chance, step away from the lights, look up, and remember. For as long as there have been humans, we have gazed at those same stars and read in them our direction, our seasons, and our stories. The star maps in their heads are, in a sense, still waiting in the sky for anyone willing to look up and learn to read them once more.